Hey y'all, it's time for human geography. If you guys can hear me and see me, see my videos, see my slides, put something in the comments. Seems like we've got 3 people on and 10 registered, so I'm going to give everybody else a few more minutes to get in and a few more minutes to ask questions while I finish getting set up right here. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me good? Can y'all hear me good? So earlier, Mary asked in the comments, can we go over Unit 3? And yes, we can go over Unit 3. I would like to take more specific questions first and then do the unit overview last, but I can certainly do that. But what I'm doing is in the comments, I've put a link to the Unit 3 study guide that has all of the different topics of Unit 3 there. And I forgot who wrote this one. Let me see. Can I find it? Can I find out who wrote it? Maybe, maybe not. Does not look like I can. That will definitely be figured out in a little bit. But it has all of the topics, vocab words, things you need to know about Unit 3 if you scroll through the whole Unit 3 vocab. But then also for AP Human Geography Unit 3, I will link our Unit 3 AP Human Geography page. You can view all of the videos, slides, trivia, study guides of Unit 3, and it has some really great resources about religion, language, diffusion, the cultural landscape, asking what is culture, and then there's also a great trivia game that I created for language, religion, and culture, if you want to play that to test yourself after you go through the study guides. Hopefully everything that's on there is on the study guides, but haven't checked that yet, so we can only hope. It seems like we've got 2 more people on, so I'll give everybody else a few more minutes to get in while I keep doing the announcements. But this is going to be my last AP Human Geography Q&A study session with you guys, so either that's good or that's bad. There's no in between. Pick one. So for the next 3 or 4 AP Human Geography Q&A sessions, they're going to be the same time on Thursdays, just like they are, but instead of me hosting them, it'll be Mr. Levin, Sylvan Levin, I think, if you know him. He did some of the earlier cultural streams, the Unit 3 culture streams, if you want to look at those, so he'll be your host from now on for Q&A. So, yay or nay, whichever one. Aw, thanks, Mary. Hopefully I'll be back for some. Oh, but instead of Q&A, I do have a few other human geography streams lined up. In the chat, I also linked Shreya's stream today. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, about development theories, development models with Shreya. I'm sorry, Rishika? Did I pronounce that right? Rishika? Okay, sorry. Your name, back to Unit 3, your name is your identity. Your name is your culture. So I don't want to go and pronounce it wrong and completely butcher your whole culture and your whole identity. That's okay. But I've linked Shreya's stream today about socioeconomic development and sustainability. It's about Unit 7, so it's not on the test, but it's a great thing to learn. Unit 7 is one of the best units of human geography, as opposed to I kind of don't like Unit 3. Unit 3 is kind of not my favorite unit, but that's okay. That's okay. I still know it. But next week on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm hosting Industrial Revolution stream, and then the Thursday after that, I'm doing economic sectors. All right, so it looks like we have most of our people in here now. So I think that I am going to try to start our slides and start our stream in just a moment, for real. So here's the weekly stream calendar. I know I've shown this to you guys before, and I'll show it to you every time, just in case this is your first AP Human Geography Q&A stream with me. But, make sure you go to the other, these are the major, nighttime, these are our, constant, we'll always have these streams. Our daytime streams are sometimes maybe 1 week we'll skip it or something, but these are the times that we will always have those streams. So I hope that you can take a picture of that, get whatever information you need from that written down to make sure that you can go to all of the 5 streams for all of your different AP classes, making sure that you learn all of the everything that's required for your exams. Okay, and then also follow us at Think5able. I've added some new social media platforms that we have. We have Twitter, Insta, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. Follow us on TikTok. Yes, we have a TikTok. Brandon Wu, who streams for AP English Lang on Monday nights, makes all of our TikToks. So, check those out. They're pretty fire. Not to sound like an old person, because I'm probably the same age that you guys are, because I'm like the youngest person in my class, but we're not going to care about that right now. But we also have Facebook if you're older than me, just in case you don't have any TikToks or, Instas. Hopefully we'll make a Snapchat soon. I don't know. I'll suggest that. But as always with Q&A streams, you guys will be setting the agenda with your own questions, with whatever unit overviews you have. I actually don't. Oh, yeah, I have slides for Unit 3. But you guys, please, even if you came late, you just got here, put any questions that you have, any unit overviews that are really hard that you want me to go through quickly in the chat. I will always be looking through, scrolling through the chat, see what people want to say. It looks like 2 people, Mary and a new person, want to go over Unit 3. So first, I do want to start with looking at some stimuli, because this year's exam, if you know already, it's going to be 2 FRQs. One of them is going to have 2 stimulus, which is just like 2 charts, 2 maps, 2 images, and then the other one is only going to have 1 chart, 1 map, 1 image. So I want to practice looking at different stimulus from each of the units that you guys want to go over and see like how you guys would interpret these. So before I go over it, just to see like what your strengths and weaknesses are with culture. So when you look at this chart, this is actually from the 2018 AP Human Geography FRQ. I think it was number 3 that year. But when you look at this chart, it's kind of one of the cringe meme FRQs, I guess. So when you look at this, what do you think the questions might ask you? Like, in as few words as possible, since you can put it in the chat. What do you think the questions there might ask you? Or what do you see on the chart? Any vocab words in AP Human Geography? Don't put selfie, newbie, cool, groovy, rad in the chat, but like any AP Human Geography words that you see that are about this chart, that may be in the title of this chart. Language and maybe culture, yes. This is from Unit 3. So Unit 3 is about culture, language, and religion. So in this one, we're looking at language, but the title also says terms in popular culture. So we're thinking about how language and popular culture mix. So if we're thinking about popular culture, we're probably not thinking of the language tree. It's probably not going to ask us, like, what are the 5 groups of the language tree or the branches. So somebody, Rashika says, how does the chart show the evolution of pop culture? Yeah, that could definitely be a question that the AP exam could ask you. Mary says, why are specific words used during the time period? I like that question. That one's good too. They probably wouldn't ask it that way. They would probably phrase it to like, why did the words in time periods change? Because they probably can't ask you like why groovy was popular in the 1960s. Like, they don't expect you to say the hippie movement loved the word groovy in the 1960s and it was about the time of McCarthyism and the Red Scare, but they probably won't expect you to know that on the exam. But then again, College Board can surprise you. So I don't see any others, so I'm going to reveal what the AP exam actually asked in 2018 about this chart. So they said to identify 2 specific means by which new expressions in popular culture are diffused globally. So this one is actually, FRQ is actually asking about diffusion. I'm sure you could not have guessed that from the chart, but it's about diffusion. So that's kind of a Unit 1, Unit 3, Unit 2 even, I guess, kind of crossover. So in Part B, it says popular culture often spreads through a combination of different types of diffusion. Describe how terms, such as those shown in the table, diffuse spatially through each of the following processes. So you have some vocab words from different units here, like diffusion, global, popular culture, spatially. And then you have the three of the major types of diffusion: relocation, contagious, hierarchical diffusion. there's a lot in this FRQ right here. So this could be like your 15-minute FRQ, the second FRQ, because you have one chart, one stimulus right here, and then you have a few questions about it. And then part C says, when new words diffuse, they confront barriers. Identify and explain 2 barriers to diffusion that are often encountered even as new terms become more popular. So basically this question is asking about barriers of diffusion. So it can be physical, it can be cultural barriers to diffusion. In Unit 3, I can go over them, but there are all sorts of different barriers to diffusion and barriers to globalization and people becoming more connected. In the chat, I see, how would we use the chart to prove our points here? So the chart necessarily might not help you prove your point about the type of diffusion, but what the chart could do is serve as an example for the type of diffusion. You could use, in 2010, the word selfie was able to diffuse globally because people were posting selfies on the internet through platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. So you could use technology and global infrastructure as a way that the word selfie diffused. You could think of, gotta love the randomness of AP Hug. Yeah, you're welcome. But you could think about the word groovy in the 1960s, like I talked about. They're probably not going to ask you why specific words were used at the time period, but if you know that groovy was associated with like the peace, the hippie movement, you could say like some facts about the 1960s, some fact about the hippie movement that you know about, like the whole peace sign with the Afro wig and the word groovy, I guess. So it's all about just like using the chart as an example. Usually they won't give you a map to prove a point, but they might also give you a map that, you know, might guide your thinking and your answers to the questions. So does anybody want to try to answer any of the parts like very quickly? Like if it's a described question, just identify it for right now. If anybody wants to do that, you can try to do that in the chat while I'm pulling up some culture slides to go over the unit with you guys. And also, before I do, which part of culture are you guys like most weak on? Do you need a review on like religion, language, like pop culture versus folk culture, like, or just overall culture unit? Language and religion, perfect. We also have, that I will pull up on that AP Hug Unit 3 page, Rita M. did a whole stream on religion. Actually, was that on Tuesday? I think last Tuesday night, Rita did a whole stream on religion and language. Yeah, April 14th, so last Tuesday. Oh yeah, we have the replay up already too, great. So in the chat, I have put a link to religion and language. Rita will go a lot more in depth on the different types of religions and the different branches of the language tree right here. So that could definitely help you review those topics that you really need to make sure that you are solid on. And the slides are linked correctly, so you have all of the different things that you can go look at. But I can actually pull those up right now, share them with you, and talk about them a little bit. I'll go through them a little bit quicker than she probably would on her stream. You guys can go check that out later. But I am trying to find them. There we go. Sorry, we have a whole giant database of things that I can't just click through, try to go find her slides. I'm going to make the slides bigger. Okay, so looking through the chat, what people have responded to. So for part B, Michaela says, describe how terms such as those shown in the table diffuse spatially through each of the following processes. So contagious diffusion, Michaela says people could start saying those words and other people start repeating them. Yeah, so that's definitely how contagious diffusion works. And then if you want to go even further in your FRQ and try to, you know, maybe even get more points for that, you could try to go in and say, well, schools are a great place for contagious diffusion because when I say the word newbie or selfie in school, that might make other people in school say the word selfie or newbie. Or if I use the word selfie in a tweet that I write and I have like 300 followers, then maybe one of my 300 followers will use it. But if you want to talk about tweeting something like that, doesn't look like anybody used this example, but if you're talking about hierarchical diffusion, you could say that, let's say Khloe Kardashian, who has like millions of Twitter followers. Oh, actually Mary. Mary just stole my thunder with her answer. So Mary says hierarchical, maybe celebrities use the word selfie and then their followers would start saying it, kind of trickle down the social media effect. Yeah, perfect. That's actually what I was about to say. So Rashika says the internet example of contagious because it spread rapidly and quickly with technology. Yeah, perfect. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that FRQ example and show you some slides on religion and language. Hopefully this works. Woohoo, it works. All right. So let me make these slides bigger so you guys can see them better. I know you guys have had some issues before. LG says, so all of language is memes. No, not all of language is memes. I mean, there's some serious things you have to know, like the language tree, diffusion of different languages, but that FRQ was kind of really just about, memes and diffusion. Okay, so here we have the fact that language is a system of communication, usually spoken, but sometimes can be written, and it's a collection of sounds that a group of people understand to have the same meaning. So by that, what we're saying is right now I'm using language. You guys should theoretically understand what I'm saying because we all speak English. I might use some different dialects or slang words, like I'm from Texas, so I use the word y'all and hey, howdy all the time, but besides that, our vocabulary in English is basically the same. So that's how you guys can understand me, and you guys can understand what I say, and it have the same meaning in your brain, hopefully, that it has in mine after I'm done explaining it to you. And the only major vocab word here is literary tradition, which just means written language. And so that can be anything that I type out. So these slides, right, let me find a pointer. These slides, all of these words on the slide is literary tradition. This picture right here is the literary tradition. Hola, that's Spanish for hello in English. Ciao, that's Italian, I think. Bonjour is French for hello. So there are all different types of literary traditions and written languages that we all see as normal. I mean, different countries use different languages. So there are different categories or groups, umbrella groups for world languages. There's language families. That's the biggest overarching group. It has the most languages in it of all three of these categories. So language families are common ancestry. There's a ton of languages. So when we talk about literary traditions, like right here on the last slide, literary traditions came later than spoken word like we have now. Most societies in the ancient world used spoken language and oral traditions to pass things down between family branches and to their kids. But then a language branch is languages that existed several thousand years ago. So that's when we started really going into all of the different types of written languages, like we differentiated Spanish and French because Spain and France are so close to each other, and there used to be people who lived in the same state area that was Spain and France a while ago, but their nations were different because they spoke different languages, but they didn't really know that the languages were that different until they started writing them down. And language groups are just collection. These are more recent. We can group English and German together in the language group because they both come from the same origin, have a lot of the same word stems and word roots. We can also group, just like I said, Spanish and French together in a language group because they have a lot of the same, different words, except maybe they have a minorly different spelling or minor different pronunciation. In the chat, Kelly asked, Unit 3 also includes ethnicity. Yes, it does. Right now, I'm going to try to breeze through language, but I'll try to make sure that I get to the ethnicity too. So this is a picture of the language tree. So down here, all of these are the language families. And up here you have the branches. Then on the leaves right here, you have the groups. Yeah. You don't need to memorize this. You don't need to spend hours studying it. You're never going to be asked to draw the language tree on your AP exam. At least I hope not. In the chat, Rashika says, I gotta say, the language tree is really growing on me because trees grow. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Enough with the dad jokes. Back to human geography. So that's the language tree. And if I can find it, as I said, English and German are grouped together here. Spanish and French are grouped together here, along with, I meant to mention, Portuguese. So you see all of these Languages share common, common things. So these are some of the language families. These are the number of languages attached to them. You don't need to memorize these numbers. You don't need to know all these things, but you need to know that Indo-European and Sino-Tibetan are the two most spoken language families. Now, something that you might have to know about language families, I'll have you guys respond in the chat, but what's the most major Sino-Tibetan and what's the most spoken Indo-European language in the world? If you want to put like IE and then put the language, or ST and then put the language. Does anybody know what two languages? Yeah, perfect, Mary. English and Mandarin. Sino-Tibetan is Mandarin. Yeah, you guys are getting it. So Sino-Tibetan is more of, I don't even know where that is on the language tree. See, like I did really well in the AP exam, but I can't even find where the heck. Oh, Sino-Tibetan over here. So Mandarin is over here. It's one of the most widely spoken languages. Then we have English over here. This is actually by the number of countries that speak it, and this language tree is actually pretty old. But you can see that these are English and Mandarin are two of the biggest leaves. And if I go over here, Sino-Tibetan, this language family, and Indo-European, they have the most speakers, but Atlantic Congo actually has the most countries in that language family with their official languages, standard languages. So as you can see, Indo-European, the largest family, Sino-Tibetan, China, Mandarin. Indo-European has English, Spanish, French, German, Dutch, Italian, everything that I can think of at the time. Also Portuguese. Rashika says, how does language most often come in FRQs? Usually it won't just be about language. It'll probably be about language and culture or language in the formation of a state. They'll probably ask you more about the vocab words of language that I'm going to try to find right now. You guys can, these are the slides that Rita used in her religion and language stream. So you guys can see some of these, but I don't think that she actually included some of these. Okay, so I'll have to talk to you without slides. That's okay. We got this, guys. So how does language most often come up in FRQs? Usually through vocab words. They might ask you what the language tree is, but they're not going to ask you to draw the language tree. They might ask you to talk about what lingua franca is, and then you would just say lingua franca is a commonly used language for trade in a region. It's agreed upon between two people. So when we're in the United States of America, the lingua franca is usually English, even if you have people from Spain or France coming over to trade in New York City or Washington, D.C., the lingua franca is usually going to be English. But when Americans travel to China, usually the lingua franca of their trade is going to be some form of Mandarin, whether it's standard or traditional or contemporary. Their lingua franca is going to usually be Mandarin when we go to trade in places like Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, the different major cities in China. Something else they could ask you about language would be, what's the most spoken language? Mandarin. The language with the most speakers in the world is Mandarin. But they could also ask you that Indo-European is the largest family. So really, there aren't a ton of language FRQs on the exam. Language usually shows up more in multiple choice, but usually the things they'll ask you to talk about would be something like lingua franca, what's the Indo-European language family, what's the most spoken language, anything you could describe and give an example for. Usually they'll ask you more about religion in FRQs. So there are two main types of religions, universalizing and, universalizing. It's such a weird word. Why can't they just say globalization? I don't know, globalizing religion. Universalizing just sounds so weird. Like we're not bringing it to Mars and stuff. It's only in our Earth, the world. Don't know why it's called universalizing, but we're just gonna accept it. Get it? Because universalizing religions accept all people who want to be participating in their religion. And then there's also ethnic religions. So with universalizing religions, we have the major religions, which are going to be Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism. Also, we say Judaism is a universalizing religion, but usually that one's more of on the fence because Judaism has some missionaries, but they don't tend to have new followers. Judaism is mostly a family tradition, and by that I mean your grandfather was a Jew, so now your parents are Jews, which makes you a Jew because you're born into the family, and then you have rites of tradition like bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and there are all sorts of family holidays that are focused in Judaism. So that's why it's kind of on the fence. It's more of a passed down through generations kind of thing. But then you have ethnic religions, which are kind of appealing to a specific group. Usually they have a specific location where they're practiced. One of the biggest ethnic religions in the world is Hinduism. It's the most dominant religion in India and a few other Southeast Asian countries. Hinduism, while it's a really big religion, it doesn't have missionaries, doesn't have people who try to get you to convert to Hinduism. You don't see, actually you might, but if you live in a big city, but in rural places, you don't see a lot of Hindu or agnostic temples. In rural areas, you see a lot of small town churches for Christianity. You see a lot of small town places where people can have mass for Catholics, for Christians. But with ethnic religions, you'll usually get atheism, shamanism, Hinduism, agnostic. You don't need to know the definition of the words atheism and agnostic for the exam, but that's kind of what you need to know. You don't need to know that. Actually, I will. So basically, there are some subsets of these religions. So Christianity, one of the biggest religions in the world. It's actually the religion with the most observance, the most followers in the world right now, I believe, Christianity. But basically, there are different like branches of Christianity, right? There's Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant. So in these, different big branches, there are denominations, and some of the denominations of being Protestant are, Methodist, Baptist, Church of Christ, and then you also have some sects, small groups that break away, like you have Jehovah's Witnesses that broke away from Protestant and Roman Catholic. You also have sects of things like the Church of Christ or Bible churches that don't call themselves Protestant, Catholic, or Orthodox. They just call themselves religious Christians. That's really all you need to know about that. So branches within Christianity, like I said, Roman Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox. You learn about how all of these different religions broke up in world history, AP World History, which I'm in right now. Don't love it, but we're good with that. Islam. Islam is one of the next biggest religions in the world. Did you know that half of the Muslims in the world don't even live in the Middle East? Most of them, almost half of them, actually live in Indonesia and Malaysia. It's something from globalizing in world history and I think it was the 1200s to 1400s when Muslims were conquesting from Persia, Safavid empires to go spread Islam to the world. It has two branches, Sunni, which is the biggest, and Shiite, which is mostly in Iran and Iraq. And then you should also know that Islam has, I don't even know what I was going to say. Lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah, Islam has 5 pillars, which are just things that all people who follow the religion follow these 5 pillars, the way that they live their life. You don't need to know a ton about religions. I personally, in my rich knowledge of being an AP writer, don't think that they will have an FRQ just dedicated to the pieces of religion, because to me, that's not the top thing that we show in AP Human Geography. We don't care about the globalization and diffusion of religions. That's just a part of the culture unit. So let me go find some things about ethnicity and race. Here, we can talk about this for right now. Okay, so I want to show you a few vocab words from the culture unit. Do you guys have any other specific questions besides me going over culture? So here are some vocab words. Put in the chat which vocab words you don't know. So the difference between race and ethnicity. So I'm going to let you guys put some vocab words in before I start explaining, actually. So usually race is when you categorize based on physical characteristics. race is usually just a social construct based on your outside traits and what color your skin is. It's not actually just determined by somebody else. Your race is determined by you. You fit into whatever social construct you want to. But the ethnicity, though, is usually something that decides based on your family's origin, different traits that you have. So ethnicity for me could be, you know, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of my culture. So in culture, I don't even know. But ethnicity could be something like you're Brazilian, but your race could be, Hispanic, South American. Your ethnicity more depends on your upbringing and the culture that you identify with, but race could be more having to deal with the outside. So if you really just want to boil it down to something simple, race is what you think on the outside, and ethnicity is what you are on the inside. They're kind of evolving definitions. And ethnicity, you usually identify with a group of people, your culture, your nation, if you think about political geography vocab words. But they're kind of ever-evolving definitions. There is a difference, and it's really just outside versus inside. Taylor says, can we talk about Unit 5 after? Yeah, sure. I'll spend about 5 more minutes on culture, and then we can move to agriculture. Sure. Rashika says trait versus complex. So trait is going to be more like race, what's on the outside, what's your skin color, what's the shape of your head, what's the color of your hair, the color of your eyes. But complex is going to be more like it's complex, it's what's on the inside, it's what nation you identify with, it's what culture you think you're in. Ethnocentrism versus cultural relativism. Ooh, okay, so these are some really big words. So basically, ethnocentrism is when I am going to say that I think in my mind and in my subconscious that my culture is superior. And I'm only going to look through this. Let's use my glasses as a lens, for example. So I only look through my glasses to see the world. And basically, ethnocentrism is when I take my perspective from my culture and I, describe other cultures. Usually it has to deal with preconceived notions or something that's different. So ethnocentrism is really when somebody looks at you and you're a different culture or you're other than them, you're something other than them, and the definition of ethnocentrism doesn't say that you look down on them, but it's usually that you think subconsciously when you look at different people or other people that your race, your ethnicity, your culture, your nation is superior. Cultural relativism is when you use the lens, the scale of analysis of a global perspective. So you look at everything from a global issue. So recently there's been a debate about eating bushmeat in China because of this whole COVID-19 situation. Scientists have decided that there's a 90% probability that COVID-19 originated from undercooked bat soup sold in a Wuhan market in China. So there's been this big debate about, why does China eat bushmeat? I'm sorry, I should have defined this. Bushmeat is something that we wouldn't normally eat. In Africa, bushmeat is usually squirrels, different small animals that they can kill and eat. It's not things that you find in a grocery store. It's usually just like small dead animals. They could be live animals that you kill that you have to eat because you don't have another option. Bushmeat is usually like the lowest of the low. It's like eating squirrels, bats in developing or underdeveloped countries usually. So if you look at cultural relativism from a global scale, you could look at it from a global scale and say, well, China it's a developing country. It's in stage 3 of the demographic transition model. So it doesn't have access to an FDA and things like that. So they're kind of forced to eat bushmeat because it's not like they have a ton of fresh, cooked, cleaned, cured, secure meat sources, protein for their family. But if you look at it through an ethnocentrist, if I look at it from my I'm rich and I'm American scale, you can say, why are they eating bushmeat? Why don't they just go buy ground beef? Or why don't they just go buy chicken that's been cooked from the grocery store? Like, why are they eating bushmeat? This bushmeat has caused me to have to stay in my home and be quarantined in a disease. So if you look at that global issue right now about eating bushmeat in developing countries from an ethnocentric scale, you could see that I don't think that's right. I don't think that people should be eating bushmeat around the world. But if I look at it from a cultural relativist perspective, I could say that, well, I know in some developing countries that there isn't access to a Food and Drug Administration that could monitor the quality of meat and the standards of food that are being served in the country. So, Mary says in the chat, yeah, some people are so racist, shaking my head. I personally am not saying that Fiveable or my personal opinion is that people are being racist or anything towards Asian people. I don't think that some statements are racist, but it's really just about, I'm just talking about looking at through different scales and looking from a cultural relativist perspective. I am not saying nor endorsing anything about different statements that people are saying to be racist or not racist right now. I don't want to get into that, but I'm putting that out as a disclaimer right now. Okay, so back to culture. There's my brief disclaimer. Yeah. Okay, cultural trait. Basically, that's a single attribute of a culture. So you could say that the culture of people in Wuhan, China, back to that story, they could, have a culture, they usually eat bushmeat. They don't have access to fried eggs and things to cook, dumplings. Like, they have to eat bushmeat because that's what they eat or they don't survive. They have to make dishes with that. That could be a single attribute of their culture. And it differs around the world. Some people put flowers at gravesites of people who died. But in the Jewish community, it's actually very common to put rocks and pebbles on people's graves to honor them. It's just a trait from the Jewish culture. And some traits are invented and create a sense of identity. So basically you have, I think that this is fondue from Switzerland, cheese fondue of Swiss people. And then you also have Irish people with kilts. Material versus non-material, that was on the vocab list, and you guys didn't seem to have any issues with that. But really, it boils down to a pretty simple topic. Material is something that I can touch, I can feel. These are parts of my material culture as being a teenager. My phone, my, water bottle with a ton of stickers on it, my chapstick, these are all things of my material culture of being a teenager. But non-material culture of being a teenager is using language like we saw in that chart from the FRQ in the beginning. It could be the words that I use, but my non-material culture of being a Texan could be that I use words like y'all, hey, howdy, what's up, things like that. Cultural complex. So that's the unique combination of cultural traits that make you you. You can be a member of multiple different cultures, of multiple different ethnicities, but the cultural complex is what makes you you. It's all of your complex traits. All right. So, as promised, I hope that I got enough into culture for you guys. If I didn't, I'm so sorry. I'll try to take a few more specific questions at the end if you can think about them of culture as I go into agriculture. So let me again share my screen with you. I don't really love Crowdcast because I have to share each individual tab whenever I'm done with the last one. It's kind of annoying. But stay hydrated inside. You can get dehydrated so easily. Make sure you're drinking water, guys. But when we start on agriculture, I want to spend a few minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, looking at this agricultural stimuli. I'm glad that we picked a unit that I had 2 stimulus for because I only had that for 1 or 2 units. So agriculture. We looked at agriculture last week, I believe, too, in my Q&A session. But here's and I've covered both of these topics last week, if you were here. So maybe you guys will know the answer to this question. What do you see in photo Y, or what do you see in photo Z? If you want to put Y in the chat and then you want to put Z in the chat, then I'll know which picture you're describing, just to make sure. Don't know why they chose the letters Y and Z. It's not like there were photos A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P. Okay, so Michaela says in Y, I see wet rice farming. Perfect. Great identify. So a question they could ask you on the AP exam if you got these 2 stimulus, which people in 2016 did, was what is happening in picture Y and what's happening in picture Z. Z is plantation. Don't love the word plantation. I mean, it kind of has a negative connotation, but that's a correct identification. You can call it plantation. You can call it agriculture using technology. The AP readers, their top choice was commercial agriculture, developed agriculture using machinery to harvest crops. There were different things that they accepted for that. But yeah, Y is subsistence, Z is commercial, and yeah, this photo Z is actually of wheat farming. I'm thinking that some of you guys have done this FRQ before because I do see some things that are definitely in the rubric that you guys are saying exactly. But is there anything else you think they could ask you guys about these? I know that I've actually seen some great ideas like developed versus developing agriculture, subsistence versus commercial, extensive versus intensive. So you know what? I want to get more to the information in this unit. This is my last room with you guys for Q&A, but don't worry, I'll be back with some Unit 7 topics next week. These two pictures show the two types of agriculture in the world. Subsistence versus commercial. Extensive on the bottom versus intensive on the top. So identify the grain crop shown in each photo. Boom, you guys have already done that. Michaela said Y is wet rice farming, and who was it said it first? Kelly said Z is plantation, and Kelly said A is wheat commercial. You guys have all answered A correctly. You got the 1 or 2 points. I don't remember exactly for that section. B says, discuss two economic differences between subsistence and commercial. Who said subsistence and commercial? Kelly said subsistence. I said commercial. But Kelly kind of said plantation, which is a type of commercial agriculture. So, boom, got that one. Rashika says subsistence is not for profit. Boom, that's an economic impact. So a really common mistake on AP exams that we saw a ton last year, because in 2019 when I took the AP Human Geography exam, there was an FRQ that had to identify an economic, social, and environmental reason for something. But a lot of kids mixed up what they could say for economic, and they put a social reason for economic and an economic reason for social, and the AP readers can account it because it wasn't an economic reason. But here we have two economic differences. So when you see economic on the AP Human Geography exam, like don't think of this on like AP Macroeconomics or AP Micro, like this is a really boiled down, dumbed down, like AP Hug definition for economic. Just think money. Think jobs, think business, think money for economic. That's all you need to think. When you see environmental, think, anything about the environment. Think farming, think the crops that they're growing, think pollution. I took AP Environmental Science, so I'm really trying to not say big fancy environmental science words that you're going to ask me. Rashika says, what's social versus political? Social is going to be something like the infant mortality rate. Social is going to be the literacy rate. What else? Education, gender equality index, things like that could show social. But political could be, what kind of government do you have? What kind of laws do you have? I don't know. There's a whole political geography unit, so you guys could probably come up with better examples than I could. But yeah, I'll leave that to you guys. You guys can come up with some political examples on your own. This may or may not just be a cop-out because my brain can't think right now. So, and then the last two are environmental impacts for photos Y and Z. Actually, can anybody tell me an environmental impact for either of those photos? Because without even looking at the rubric, I can think of some from AP Environmental Science. Z, more pollution. I'm actually going to pull up the rubric real quick just to see if that was counted. But if you guys can think of any others while I'm pulling up this rubric from 2016. Boom, I have the rubric. Let's see if they accepted more pollution. Okay, so they did not accept more pollution. What they accepted about pollution was they said more air pollution from using vehicle exhaust and agricultural chemicals like herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. They accepted water pollution if you've talked about chemical pollution, dead zones in lakes and oceans, things like that. That's what they accepted for pollution. Does anybody know an environmental impact of why? Deforestation. Deforestation. I don't really think so for deforestation. Y is about planting rice in water, wet streams. Michaela says, okay, so you have to be specific with it. Yes. Yes. Be specific with your answers. Don't say broad words like pollution, global warming. Say like air pollution from vehicle exhaust in AP Human Geography. That's as specific as you need to get with it, but you can't just say pollution because that is so broad. So broad. Why deforestation? I'm thinking of where you could get deforestation from, but I don't really see that. If you want to try to explain it to me, Kelly, I might accept that as an answer, but I don't see. I'm racking my AP Human Geography brain with content, but I don't know. So Taylor says environmental pesticides affecting people and why, because they're using them themselves, versus people in Z using pesticides via machinery. Yeah, so you could definitely get the point for identifying pesticides in Z to speed up commercial agriculture, but in photo Y, they don't really use pesticides. Mary got exactly what I was thinking. Releases greenhouse gases. Yes. Wet rice farming, paddy rice farming, they release huge amounts of methane, CH4, methane into the atmosphere. Methane is the most harmful greenhouse gas. So methane is the chemical composition of CH4. I'm going to give you some AP environmental science knowledge right here. So methane is CH4, and methane is the biggest impact greenhouse gas. I'm sure that most of you didn't think about methane or anything till today. You just thought about carbon dioxide, CO2 pollution, right? Yeah. But methane comes from things like paddy rice farming, cow poop, using way too much fertilizer in agriculture and having it run off to water streams. So methane emissions into the atmosphere, because methane holds the most heat. Methane is one of the things that's most responsible for global warming because there's not as much of it as CO2 in the atmosphere, but methane actually causes a greater impact per amount of methane that you have. You know, carbon dioxide doesn't actually cause that much harm. It's just that there is so much carbon dioxide. Methane causes a lot of harm. It's just that there is not a lot of methane, so it's not a big topic of conversation. Okay, so Kelly explaining deforestation. I was thinking more like slash and burn, Sweden, but I guess that probably doesn't apply to wet rice farming. Yeah, so deforestation could definitely work for slash and burn, Sweden agriculture, but yeah, not really for wet rice. But at least you've got some of the agriculture topics down. That's pretty good. So yes, Y is going to be about greenhouse gases, methane, people like stepping on killing fish because they're planting rice in the fish's waterways. But then Z is going to be more about vehicles. You see all these big, giant vehicles having exhaust. You can actually see some of the exhaust right there, spraying dust up into the atmosphere, using pesticides, things like that. Oh, we don't need more practice. We want to go look at agricultural geography, don't we? Yes, we do. All right, agriculture. Whew. So I'm going to link, as I'm talking, I'll get the AP Human Geography Unit 5 link put in the chat here if I can. So AP Human Geography. The link should be in the chat right now. So we watch streams, read the study guides for Unit 5. That link should take you to everything that 5 will has for the agriculture unit of AP Human Geography. So basically, I don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to go pretty quickly through this list. Where can I get an FRQ for each unit? Usually the study guides at the end of them have a practice FRQ for the unit, but also if you Google AP Human Geography College Board released FRQs or some combination of those words, and you click on the link that takes you to the College Board website, there's a ton of FRQs. The only thing you have to be careful of is that the FRQs aren't about economics and development or about urban geography, because those aren't on the exam. I can show you actually how to get FRQs in a second if you want me to at the end of my stream. You know what? I definitely will do that since it's my last one with you guys, and I definitely have a good method for it. All right. So back to AP Human Geography again. Agricultural geography. Origins and diffusion of agriculture. This is actually one of the most important topics in Unit 5, basically knowing how agriculture started, besides rural land use. So here you have the first agricultural revolution. In the first agricultural revolution, you have people in Mesopotamia who start planting seeds. You have people who start learning that they can have agriculture in just one place, because before then they used to be nomadic. They used to just go all around with their animals, grazing on grass all over the land. And the second agricultural revolution, we mostly have that caused by the Industrial Revolution. That's when we started putting machines into agriculture, new innovations like crop rotation, the plow, harvesting. Kelly, can you rephrase your question while I'm talking, or like add a star, like an asterisk to fix something? I don't really understand, but I'll definitely cover it if you can help me understand what you're asking. I'm sorry. But the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution is the most recent. The Green Revolution happened in the 1960s. So basically a guy, Norman Borlaug, Norman Borlaug, he decided that we can have more agriculture growing more grains, more food, using less space. We need to be innovating on agriculture. So with the Green Revolution, he added in things like GMOs, pesticides, herbicides. He decided that crops, you could grow more in one area. He also had new ideas. So the second agricultural revolution is going to be from the 1800s. It's more about putting machinery into agriculture, putting new innovations. But the Green Revolution is about pesticides, GMOs, modern technology. So the second agricultural revolution is putting things like the plow and crop rotation. The Green Revolution is putting pesticides and GMOs into agriculture to make sure that we can grow more food. I hope that answered your question, Kelly. The Columbian Exchange. This is when Taylor says, yes, second coincides with the Industrial Revolution. Perfect. So the Columbian Exchange is not that important to human geography, but basically that's when we moved crops and animals in the 14 to 1500s across the Atlantic from Europe to the Americas and the Americas to Europe. And then we have the practice of agriculture. I kind of talked about a few of those things in the FRQ, so I'm going to skip that for now. But subsistence versus commercial agriculture, I think you guys all get that mainly. Commercial is just when you're growing things for profit. Subsistence is when you're not growing things for profit, when you're just growing things for your family. So yeah, I hope you guys get that. But terrace farming we looked at in the last Q&A session. You can go watch the replay, look for that. We looked at some agricultural stimulus there. But basically terrace farming is when you use the land that has its mountain hilly areas and you grow it along the contour, which just means the hills of the land. You don't like trying to change the land for your agriculture. Slash and burn agriculture, I think that Kelly mentioned that, when she was talking about deforestation. That's basically when you're done growing in a place. This one usually goes to subsistence agriculture. You kind of I like to think about the jungle of the Amazon just because it's a fun example. I take my big machete just because I'm being kind of stereotypical like Amazonian, and I slash away all the vines of the Amazon, and I slash away like all of the dead crops on the floor. And then what I end up doing is I end up just burning. I burn the trees that I've used for agriculture, or the plants that I'm done within the soil. And you think of like forest fires. No, bad, no. But actually, they're not that bad. Forest fires actually help to return nutrients to the soil. If I can't grow crops in a place anymore, it's because the soil doesn't have any nutrients. But an easy way in subsistence agriculture to return nutrients to the soil is actually to burn it. Ash can give you pretty big nutrients if you burn dead crops, because the crops have nutrients in them. They just don't have enough nutrients to survive themselves. But if you put it back into the soil, the nutrients can help other crops grow. Mary says, like a phoenix. Yes, Harry Potter nerds, like a phoenix. Sorry, no offense. But slash and burn agriculture subsistence also has shifting cultivation. After you burn a place, you usually want to leave the soil to sit to regain the nutrients for a few months, and then you move to another space. And you're shifting your cultivation place. So basically just move. It's kind of just like you move where you farm for a year, and then you go back to the other place, and then you move in another year, and go back to the other place. It's not a tough human geography word. GMOs. GMOs came with the Green Revolution. GMOs are usually used in commercial agriculture, not subsistence commercial. This is when you have, back to that stimuli, your GMOs, these right here, this wheat, all of these wheat crops that are being farmed by these giant machines are probably genetically modified wheat. Most, if not all crops or all food that you guys are eating, I think that everything besides this water that's going into my body today is going to be somehow a genetically modified food. It's just a fact of life. Even if you buy organic lettuce or organic fruits. The thing about GMO seeds is they're engineered to where they blow in the wind so they can grow more crops in less space. That's kind of the point of GMOs. But then what ends up happening is these GMO seeds blow onto organic farms, and these organic farms end up having GMO crops, and then they sell these GMO crops as organic crops. So really, are you really getting more when you pay $3 more for that apple for it to be organic versus GMO? I don't know. That's for your parents to decide, not for me, but just my opinion. But GMOs are basically where you take the favorable traits of one crop and you combine it with another crop. So either the crop can grow faster, have higher yields, or, just be a better crop, be better tasting. Did you know that broccoli did not used to taste like it does now? Broccoli is a giant genetically modified crop because they take some of the genes from cauliflower, I believe, and implanted them into broccoli to make broccoli taste better. Personally, I hate the taste of broccoli. I love all kinds of vegetables. I love Swiss chard, spinach, Brussels sprouts, but I hate the taste of broccoli and cauliflower. Bleh. Whatever. But I do still like vegetables. Don't think that I don't eat my greens, guys. And then you've got environmental determinism versus possibilism. Environmental determinism, it's kind of the definition is in the word. The environment determines what humans do. But possibilism is the opposite. That means that humans determine what happens to the environment. It's kind of pessimist versus positive person. Pastoral nomadism is another form of subsistence agriculture. You see this a lot in places like Ukraine, Southwest Russia, Kazakhstan, other countries that I can't think of right now because we're not in political geography. We're talking about agriculture. They move around these Ural Mountains and other areas, and they take their, animals, usually sheep, goats, with them to graze on different grass. They move around. They don't usually grow crops. They usually use animals for pastoral nomadism. And then plantation agriculture, like we said, it's another form of commercial agriculture. And plantation agriculture usually has a pretty bad stigma attached to it because of the word plantation, but it doesn't actually have to be with slaves. It doesn't actually have to be a plantation like you think of sugar in the Caribbean or in the United States before 1856. Plantation agriculture just means that there's a lot of farmers working on one field with a ton of crops. And then some other things about agricultural geography that aren't on this slide that you should know for the AP exam, and these are things that could probably be in an FRQ somehow, are monoculture versus polyculture, multiculture. There are a lot of different words. Monoculture just means you grow one crop in your field. Polyculture, multiculture, duoculture, triculture, whatever. That just means you grow multiple different types of crops in your field. So I can grow soy, beans, corn, and wheat, and that's polyculture. But if I go to Idaho, I'm probably going to see a lot of monoculture, a lot of only corn, or a lot of only soy fields, just because that's, pretty profitable for farmers. All right, so that's basically agricultural geography. I will answer any more questions that you guys have about that. I am going to go back to this calendar for a second while I make myself bigger. And then, so here's how you guys can see all of the past AP Human Geography FRQs. I just put a giant blue-green button there. And basically, that button is going to take you to a website that Fiveable created. No, wait, I shared the wrong window. Oh my gosh, technical difficulties, guys. Apparently I don't even have the tab open. How is this supposed to work if I can't even do my job right? Perfect, here we go! Woohoo! It's sharing my screen. Yay! All right. So if you click on that big blue-green button right there, just just below my face, like just below my face, right here, around right here, it should say all past AP Human Geography, AP Hug FRQs. If you click on that link, it takes you to this website. This is a blog post that we wrote where it goes through all of the different units of AP Human Geography, and it has all of the different questions and years attached to each unit, and it has a brief summary of what the topic is. So if you look at topic 2, population and migration, you can see that we didn't actually go over population migration today. I wanted to, but we did not. For cultural processes and patterns, we went over 2018 cultural diffusion with language. That first one in topic 3 is going to be that one where we talked about cool, rad, groovy, the different diffusion of language, the words, the types of diffusion, hierarchical, contagious, relocation diffusion. There we go. So if you really want to look at a certain topic or how they could ask you about different things, like you asked about languages or religions or effects on the cultural landscape, those are different FRQs and topics. And then you can look at every unit. So what you guys are going to want to focus on is anything that's Unit 5, Unit 4, Unit 3, Unit 2. Those are the ones that could be on your AP exam. You're not going to have any of these 2 topics. You're not going to have any of those. So let's just pretend like those don't exist, delete, move on with life. If you want to do some practice, sure, you could look at these, but these topics won't be on your exam. So I hope that you guys can look at some different FRQs, practice, do some different things with those. Hopefully that helps you. I hope that you guys were all able to get to that link right there. But do you guys have any other AP Human Geography questions for me? There's a question in the Ask a Question section. Okay, Rashika says, in general, do you have any FRQ tips on how to analyze stimuli properly? In general, no. As I am giving you very long words, I am trying to think. But honestly, when you're looking at stimuli, it really just depends on the question. Like here, I can share my slides with you again. Again. All right. So when you analyze stimuli, you just have to look at it in scales of, you have to use your scales of analysis. You have to look at it with a different perspective. So here, political geography. You see 2 maps. I'm not going to give you what the question is yet, but you see 2 maps. What would you do to analyze these? I don't know. Maybe I would look at since I know it's political geography, I could look at the borders, the shapes of the states. I could look at what the different, this state looks like Italy, look like it's a perforated state because it has different pieces over here, but then it looks like Poland right here is a central state. And then you also see 2 different times, 1980, 2013. Wow, 2013 looks like it has a lot of smaller countries inside of here. It looks like, the East broke up into certain countries. You could think right here, 1980, big, powerful USSR. Then in 2013, countries broke up. You can see right here, Yugoslavia broke up into countries like Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina. And then let's look at the question. International boundaries in Europe changed considerably from these 2 time periods. Nationalism and supranationalism were 2 geographic processes. And then here, the question talks about international boundaries and intranational boundaries, so different things. And it also asks you about like the EU, I believe. So really, it's just like looking at different things. If it's a map, you're going to want to look at it with like scales of analysis, zoom in, like you can't really zoom in on an FRQ, but like zoom into France, like I see, oh yeah, I know Paris is over here. Look at, oh yeah, I think that's Yugoslavia. Oh yeah, it is because it broke up into Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I see, oh yeah, this is probably the USSR. It broke up into Ukraine, Belarus, Romania. What is that? Moldova. Yeah. But then when you're looking at pictures, you kind of want to look at you always want to look at the background of pictures. The background is usually pretty important. When you see this picture, you see first these people wearing these hats, so you might think Asian, but then you see that there are these, things sticking up out of the water that look like grass, and then you do see the water. Then you see in the background, it looks like it's foothills. Then you see some big plants right here, which tells you that it's paddy rice. And then in this picture, the first thing you see is these giant machines. Then you see the dust and the vehicle exhaust. And then you see these crops. And then you figure out that, oh, those might be wheat crops. And we've already gone over this question, so I'm not going to analyze it with you. But here you have a bar graph. So you want to look at what's the biggest, what's the smallest, what's the difference. When you look at a bar graph or something like this or a line graph, you want to look at biggest. Well, first, you want to look at the title. Always look at the title. Selected refugee populations by country of origin. So where did refugees come from? So it looks like the biggest one with refugees leaving is Afghanistan. What could that be? Well, Afghanistan has problems with terrorism. It has a problem with a stable government. They can't create a democracy in Afghanistan. There are people who are pro-Taliban. There are people who are pro-democracy. You know, there's a big problem. When you look at Somalia, they have a problem with pirates and poverty. Iraq, they have a problem with terrorism too. Iraq and Syria, they're in the same boat. They don't have a stable government. They have problems with terrorism. And then Sudan in 2012, that was the end of Sudan's civil war. So that could explain why there are still a lot of refugees leaving, but why it's not the biggest country. And wow, the first question is to define the term refugee. And if you didn't read the title, you wouldn't know what this graph was about. So if you ever see a graph or a map, this one doesn't, look at the titles, 1980, 2013. Those could be really important to your question. I know people who failed one of the APES, the AP Environmental Science FRQs last year, because they didn't read the years on all of the maps. And the question asked about specific years on the graph, the line graph and the bar graph, and people didn't see that, and they just talked about random things. And they were right, but they didn't answer the question. Here, selected migration patterns in the late 20th century. I actually love this. I love the 2006 FRQs. If you want to go practice, look at that website and look for FRQs from 2006. They had a lot of really good FRQs that year. Like, they were pretty hard, not gonna lie, but like, they're pretty good for practice. See all sorts of writing, all sorts of arrows. Then you look at the key for the graph. Oh yeah, that's what each of the arrows is. I'm not gonna analyze this with you because we don't have time, but back to this one that we analyzed earlier. Taking a deep breath, slowing down, Harrison. We see the title, Terms in Popular Culture. See, we would have thought that this was about words, but this is really about popular culture. But then when you read the question, it's about diffusion. This is all sorts of things. So you're probably just going to be using this stimuli as an example. So I hope that helps answer your questions. I actually want to go back to this one just to leave you guys with this. But done answering. Yes. Okay, good. Do you guys have any other questions that you need to ask me? This might be my last AP Human Geography Q&A session. You'll have Mr. Levin, who's great too, Sylvan Levin, Andrew Levin, something like that. He's great, but you won't have me. Medha, please tell me how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. Medha says, do you recommend learning all the countries? I don't recommend taking every Cetera practice quiz until you get 100% on all of them, but like, I recommend knowing some of the major countries. Like, know where France is on a map, know where China is on a map, know where India is on a map, be able to point to the Middle East on a map, know where Nigeria is on a map. That one's a hard one for some people, but that's actually a really important country. Know where Brazil and Argentina are on a map. Know where all of the core countries and semi-periphery countries are on a map. Google core semi-periphery map and make sure you know all the names of the countries that are core and semi-periphery, because those are the biggest countries that they might ask you about on the AP exam. Maybe you don't need to know all of the tiny countries in Europe, but you should know the major ones. Anything you recognize the name of, you need to know. Good question, though. Any other questions for my last, how much do I have? I have 2 more minutes before I get kicked off the stream. Any other, oh guys, make sure you save that past AP Human Geography FRQ link, like open it up in another tab and don't close it till like you bookmark it or favorite it or whatever. Make sure you save that link because it's a really nice blog post and has everything organized so well. Any other questions? Thank you for giving us the practice FRQs. Yes, no, definitely no problem. But look at those practice FRQs, please, 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 please. Look at those practice FRQs. Make sure you come to these Q&A sessions, even though I won't be here. Come to the other Unit 7 streams, learn the content, even though it's not on the exam. It's a nice unit to learn. We won't be going really hard in these bonus streams, but I'm going to relink Shreya's stream over here later today at, it's in about an hour. Actually, yeah, it's in about an hour. So wrong link. Oopsies, my bad. So today, Shreya is streaming at Socioeconomic Development and Sustainability. Here's the link to her stream. I totally recommend you guys watch it. Go grab some lunch, sit down for 45 minutes, then in 45 minutes, come back, watch some more AP Human Geography. So this is about to kick me off in 13 seconds. So bye, guys. Have a great day, y'all. And I really hope that you guys, do well in this AP Human Geography exam. You're here, so I know you guys will. Have a great day. Stay safe in quarantine and keep drinking water. Don't get dehydrated.